Clear prop.
Star 738 Yankee number 2 following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear subject. 1 Charlie Bravo, Exford in runway 25, join 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and Designated Pilot Examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby. How are you?
I'm good. This is part 2 of a 2-part Rusty Pilot podcast with our friend, now 4-time visitor to the show, Pat Brown.
Yeah, 4 times.
So we talked on the last episode about all the things that may get you back into the plane that you might want to go review or listen to or look at or learn. Lots about technology and the things that have changed in the past 10 or 15 years around devices and things that are in the cockpit that you might not be familiar with.
Right.
This episode, we want to kind of give some more prescriptive guidance on exactly the steps. So I've gone to the flight school. I've talked to someone. I want to go through it. What would we recommend as a team to these listeners if they wanted to get a flight review and or just explore the Rusty Pilot stuff the AOPA has to offer?
Well, I think the first thing, if you've been out of flying for a while and you don't have a current medical, then at some point you're going to have to decide how you want to proceed there. There are a lot of different ways. If you want to exercise light sport privileges only, which you can do, you can simply decide I'm going to fly under light sport rules. You don't have to get another certificate. There's no check ride for it. You don't need a medical. You can do it on a driver's license, and it has to be a driver's license, not just a government issue photo ID. But that comes with some limitations in the types of airplanes you can fly. They have to be limited to a light sport category, and that's probably another podcast entirely. So I'll just say to anybody that's interested in that, just do some research on AOPA's website or just Google light sport, and you'll get the horsepower limitations and that kind of stuff on that. But let's just assume that that's not the route that someone wants to go. They want to go ahead and get a medical. If they have ever held a third class medical, they may be eligible for something called basic med. There's actually a date. It's in the FARs, and I did not think to look that up before I came. But if you held a third class medical at or after, and I think it's July the 15th, 2000. Let me think a second here. 2007, I think. And you might be able to Google it while we're talking here.
I will look it up.
But July 15th, 2007, or somewhere around 2005. Anyway, you may be eligible to fly under basic med. And essentially that's taking a form that you can download from your doctor, from AOPA's website, take it to your doctor. Any state licensed physician can do this physical for you. When you're done with that, the doctor signs it off. You take it back home, log on to AOPA's website. There's about an hour, maybe an hour and a half's worth of a self-evaluation medical tutorial that you have to take and pass a short quiz. When you do all of that paperwork, you'll get a certificate back that says that basically that you're flying under basic med. It still requires a driver's license. You do not have to carry the basic med paperwork with you when you fly. It just has to be available. If you get ramp checked, for example, you'll ultimately have to send that to the local FSDO. But you can fly VFR, IFR, day, night airplanes up to 6,000 pounds, up to basically up to the flight levels, up to but not including the flight levels. So essentially, that's most of the airplanes in the general aviation fleet. If you had a special issuance under your third class medical, that carries through, and if you, let's say you had to have a special issuance redone every year, for example, if you decided to fly under basic med, that's a one-time, that special issuance becomes a one-time lifetime special issuance, and unless you have another event of some sort that would ordinarily require another special issuance, you're done with those things. So again, that could probably be a program all on its own. But were you able to find the date on it?
It was July 14th, 2006.
Okay, so I was close. So if you held a third class medical on or after that date, you are eligible for basic med, and it would be worth having a conversation. Again, if you're not sure, call the Pilot Information Center, as we talked about in the last show, at AOPA, and those folks up there can walk you right through it. Otherwise, a third class medical. One of the questions I get is, well, I the last time I had a third class medical was 25 years ago. Well, basic med's not going to work. You're actually going to have to go get a third class medical. You can let it expire and then decide that you want to fly under a basic med if you want at some point down the road. But you're going to have to get another third class medical if you hadn't had one since prior to that date.
And if I've never had a medical, you might have mentioned while I was searching, if I've never had a medical, I still have to get at least one medical that was valid.
Yeah, there's a baseline philosophy there, and no matter what the case, if you've never had a medical at all, you're going to have to get one. A third class is fine.
Maybe we do need to do a whole show on basic med, because every time I talk about it, I seem to learn something new or figure out some other feature that I wasn't aware of. So medical, probably the first best step in this Rusty Pilot thought process. Yeah.
I mean, obviously you want to find a flight school. If you decide that you want to go ahead or that you need to get the third class medical, if there's any reason, and I can't emphasize this strongly enough, if there's any reason whatsoever that you feel like you can't pass a third class medical, a couple of different things that you could do. And again, I cannot recommend it strongly enough. One, again, I would start with AOPA and the Pilot Information Center. If it really, oftentimes they'll answer a quick question for you without any problems at all. If it's something that they really have to get into the weeds on, they may ask you to up your membership to the level that allows you really unlimited consultation with the medical people. But so that would be one. If you really don't want to do that, then I would strongly recommend that you make an appointment with an AME, an Airman Medical Examiner, and they're all over the place, with a consultation. Don't take them any paperwork. Don't give them any access numbers to your MedExpress, which is the online method of applying for a medical now. Some people have been out long enough may not realize that this is all done online now.
Right.
Don't give them any of the access numbers, and just tell them that you want a consultation. I want a third class medical, and to see if I can pass. And assuming that you do, then you can make another appointment, come back tomorrow or the next day or next week, do it officially, give them the paperwork. Some AMEs may allow you to go out to their office and fill out a MedExpress right there on the spot and process the paperwork. That's going to be an AME by AME decision, but I would not go in cold without having some idea of whether or not I've got a chance to pass this. There are a lot of medications now that are on the FAA's acceptable list that didn't used to be. There are a number of conditions that are on the FAA's list that are acceptable that didn't used to be. There are conditions now called CACI, C-A-C-I, conditions an AME can issue that did not used to be the case, where you can actually walk out with a medical in your pocket, where it used to be in the old days, some of those conditions required a deferral to the FAA office in Oak City, and then God knows how long that would be before you would get that. So anyway.
Unfortunately, around here, I've heard some horror stories, and I think this is the right advice for sure, to get in touch with that phone number, ask them some questions. The things that I've seen really set people back when they've started to learn how to fly or have tried to come back. Hadn't flown in 25 years, and let's say 20 years ago they got a DWI. That's a huge setback.
It's a big deal.
I don't think people are thinking that's going to prevent me from getting my pilot's certificate, but it does prevent you from getting a medical. You have to go through a lot of process.
Yeah, a DUI, that's a big deal. A DUI in and of itself is unlikely to keep you from being able to become a pilot or get back in the left seat if you have become a rusty pilot. But you absolutely have to declare that you had that, or it's going to open up a huge can of worms.
Yeah, and so there's a process that if you work through that process before going to get a medical and bringing that up. Likewise, I see a lot of young men and women who were diagnosed with ADHD and they've taken some pills of some sort, and that is pretty much a showstopper right off the bat. Many of them ultimately get a medical.
Yep.
It's the time that it takes.
Yeah.
So if you were, I would highly recommend calling that phone number and getting some help from those people.
Yeah, it's area code 301-695-2000 or 1-800-USA-AOPA.
There you go. Again, learning something new. So I, with you, we did a seminar together. You did it. I just sort of seminar hosted it with you. How often do those occur? If someone was sitting at home in Iowa right now and they want to take one, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, you're referring to our Rusty Pilot seminar, which up until COVID, we did on a live in-person basis, and we had contract seminar presenters around the country, as well as my fellow ambassadors and a few folks from the headquarters that would go out and do these things live. Post-COVID or during COVID, we pivoted to a webinar, and that's going to be the case for the next several months before we start doing them live again. But if your listeners are interested in something like that, we've got one coming up on June the 17th. That's just, next week after next, I guess, at 3 p.m. Central Time. And they can register by going to Rusty Pilots, plural, rustypilots.org. And if that's not convenient, they can search through all of the calendar listings, because we're doing them really about every other week. We're doing them at various times during the day. So if it's not convenient, 3 o'clock on I think it's a Thursday afternoon, then 7 o'clock on a Monday night might be. And they're typically about 2.5 hours long. We do take a break in between. But as we talked about in the earlier show, the previous show, it's about 2.5 hours long. The 61.56, which is the FAR that talks about flight reviews, requires 1 hour minimum on the ground, 1 hour minimum in the air. Well, 2.5 hours, we exceed the 1 hour minimum, and we cover a lot of the things that are, in fact, we cover everything that's required in the ground portion of the flight review. But as I told you in the earlier show, if I were a CFI who saw the endorsement, and by the way, we provide them a logbook endorsement that tells them, with my name on it,
That's
I think.
Right. You're in my book.
If they showed me as a CFI, if they showed me that logbook entry, I would think, man, this is great. These people have come prepared. But because I have to still put my name in the logbook as attesting that I've given them a flight review, which requires 1 hour of ground and 1 hour in the air, I'm still going to want to sit down with them at least for a little while and make sure that they've accomplished what we're supposed to have accomplished, because my name is going in that logbook.
No doubt. And sometimes that might be accomplished in a classroom. That might be accomplished in the cockpit while you're flying around. That could be accomplished while you're walking out to the plane. Lots of different ways that might be accomplished.
And one of the things that I do, when I'm doing flight reviews, even today, what I'll do is I'll send the applicant or the customer, actually, really, in this case, I'll send the customer 5 or 6 links to AOPA's website on the Air Safety Institute side of things, and I'll say pick 2, maybe 3 of these courses, go through these, and then go to the website and select 2, maybe 3 more of your choice. Bring the graduation certificates to me, because those are good for wings credit. We were talking about that off air. Those are good for wings credit. And we'll use that as the basis of the oral. And they've already spent, if they do 4 or 5 of those things, they've spent an hour and a half or 2 hours doing ground school related things. And then we can sit down and we can talk and review through some of these things. And we easily cover that requirement for Part 6156.
Well, you mentioned wings. Let's talk a little bit more about that. It's a FAA website, FAAsafety.gov,
right?
And there's a lot of courses out there, but the overall theme is a program called Wings,
right?
And it is a proficiency program through the FAA where they've tried to get creative with rusty pilots in general, aviation enthusiasts, and provide a means by which you can keep current, meaning you would eliminate the need for a flight review had you been doing these things.
Correct.
And it really is, I refer to it more as a mission-based plan if you no longer taking flight training. In our world, at a flight school here, we're doing a private and then probably a high-performance endorsement and then an instrument rating and a commercial rating and a CFI rating. And people always have a path forward, and they're taking check rides, so they don't need those flight reviews. But people that want an instrument rating and they don't really have any other ratings to go after, this program, the Wings program, provides a means by which they can have mission-based tasks to work on with CFIs, and if they do those, it kind of resets the clock for them as it relates to flight review requirements, keeping them proficient. So if you aren't familiar with the Wings program, check out FAAsafety.gov. You can log in and take a lot of courses out there, but watch the Air Institute videos, fly with an instructor. You do a number of tasks that will give you some credit, which will give you your basic, advanced, and master wings. I'm looking at their homepage now, and there's 45,000 pilots that have earned at least one phase of wings since the program started. So that's a pretty good chunk.
That's
of
pretty
pilots.
good. Does it mention the advisory circular on that page? That was one that I did not write down before I came here, because there is actually an advisory circular that the FAA has put out explaining the Wings program and the various phases. There's the basic, advanced, and master. You can start with basic, and if you want, you can advance up to advanced and then up to master. You can stay at any one of those levels once you get there. Everybody starts at basic. If you want to come back down to basic after you've attained master, you can do that. If you complete a phase of wings, it's good for a flight review with the proper endorsement in your logbook. So there are a lot of benefits to that, and I'm sure a Google search will yield the
Yes, it's
advisory.
jumping out at me, but I have seen that circular.
Yes.
Good one.
AC 6191J is in Juliet.
91J Juliet.
Yeah.
All right. So
I
now
knew
y'all-
Wally would have. Wally knows everything. That's the thing about Wally. I sit here and I look at him for validation because he knows everything.
Me.
One more time, you said advisory circular 6191J.
Yeah, and that came from Google.
All right. So if it's wrong, Wally's not taking credit for that one.
Yeah, disclaimer.
So we have talked about finding a flight school, finding an instructor. All these things come together to where ultimately you can get comfortable, get proficient, get current, get back in the airplane. So what are you going to do with it? Now that we're current again, what are my options, right? Do I just rent from a flight school? Pat, you literally are the You Can Fly ambassador. Tell us, what can we do with this newly refreshed pilot certificate?
Oh, the first thing, absolutely, the very first thing is a $100 hamburger.
No doubt.
That is the absolute first thing. Priorities, my friend.
Now that's
priorities.
One thing I'll say is they actually sell a $100 hamburger here close by for us. It's at the Conroe Airport. You go to a little restaurant called the Black Walnut, and you can buy a $100 hamburger.
Yeah.
Which you might say, why on earth would I buy a $100 hamburger? They will give you a $100 gift card, so you actually get a free hamburger and a $100 gift card.
I didn't know that. I'm going to
pretty
do
cute
that.
little gimmick up there. That if you buy a $100 hamburger, you get a $100 gift card. So the hamburger's actually free.
That's very cool. Well, there's a number of things. We get asked this question all the time. Once you're back active again, if you haven't got your instrument rating, by all means, get your instrument rating. It will make you such a better pilot, even if you never use it. You'll be so much more comfortable operating in the system. So an instrument rating, to me, would be the next natural step. If you already have an instrument rating, get current with it.
Yep.
And not just current, but get proficient again with it, because, again, that's going to take your chances of fulfilling your mission from maybe 40 to 50% at best to, depending on the airplane, maybe 90 to 95%. Again, it depends on the airplane.
And obviously, you're listening to this show. 2 weeks ago, we did a show on seeking out flight instructors, flying in marginal weather, challenging that brain power that you may had or may not have had yet, but go get some actual and see if you don't want that instrument rating after you fly.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, because it's way different than just putting on the foggles. Way
sure.
different. Get your tail wheel endorsement. I made a couple of notes here. Get your tail wheel endorsement. If you really want to learn what those things are on the floor of the airplane, those footrests down there, get your tail wheel endorsement, because those things are called rudder pedals, and they're there for a reason. And a tail wheel endorsement and a glider rating as well. You really want to know how to use the rudder pedals. A glider endorsement or glider rating, it's a check ride, or a tail wheel endorsement would be a good thing. If you just are into just fun flying, go get a seaplane rating. First time, I think I told you this, Bobby, the first time I lined up on short final with a windscreen full of water, my first thought was, this ain't right.
Yeah,
this, I've been told forever, don't do this. And now here we go doing it. And boy, I'll tell you what, what a fun rating that is. Get your multi-engine rating. My brother is a former airline pilot, and when I got my multi years ago, he told me he was really proud of me for doing it. He said, but if you're not going to fly multis all the time, he said, don't fly them at all.
Right.
And I took getting my multi-engine rating to really understand that, because that's something you really do have to stay on top of. If something goes wrong, Wally's nodding his head yes, but because in our little airplanes, we don't have these cushy big jets like you do that automatically dial in the rudder if the engine goes out and can take off on a single engine and climb. So that's something. But and then just to continue along those lines, look into a flying club. You and I, the three of us were talking offline here about most flight schools, certainly perhaps not all of them, but most flight schools are not in the business of renting their airplanes out for 3 or 4 or 5 day trips. And that's exactly what flying clubs are there for. If you lose an airplane for 4 or 5 days on a trip, if you don't charge them a 3 or 4 hour minimum each day, you're losing money.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
hard for us.
you need those airplanes for training. Well, flying clubs are built exactly for that reason. So, we talked about AOPA a little bit, but one of the benefits there is you can go to AOPA.org, and in the search window, you can type in a flying club finder. And we've got an entire section on not only finding flying clubs, but how to start one if there's not one in your area. It's not difficult to start a flying club. There's 3 of them here on the field at Hooks.
Yep.
There's 2 or 3 of them on the field at Conroe. They're all over. There's about,
and they're all pretty full too. So
they're all
starting
full.
Another one here wouldn't be the end of the world.
Would not be the end of the world.
The community could handle it.
Yeah, there's 13 flying clubs in the greater Dallas area. There's, including the glider clubs, there's 10 or 11 in the greater Houston area. So starting a flying club is not hard, and it's not terribly expensive, especially if you can find a leased back airplane. So those would be pretty much the first things I would say that you could do to stay involved and keep that interest level up.
What if I'm passionate about pets and I want to put my pilots to use for pets? What might I do there? I'm teeing that one up for you.
Yeah, pilots for paws,
Yep.
for example, and this is, while this is not for pets, Angel Flight. All of these are 501c3 corporations, so everything, whether it's a rental airplane or an airplane that you own, all of that's tax deductible from an expense standpoint. The Experimental Aircraft Association has an awesome program called Young Eagles. And you can fly a rental airplane, flying a Young Eagles event if you want. Again, 501c3, tax deductible. Don't have to have a commercial certificate. You don't have to have an instrument rating. You can be a private pilot. You can fly an experimental airplane and fly Young Eagles. So a lot of opportunities there. Anything that I'm missing there, Wally, that you can think of?
No, I will just go jump on the Angel Flight bandwagon. I fly for an organization called Pilots for Patients. Probably one of the most rewarding things I do in my flying is flying some of these patients. It's flying people to different places for medical treatment that they're not in a position, maybe a 8-hour car ride is not feasible for them. Maybe the cost of an airline ticket is not feasible for them. So it's extremely rewarding. And I tell you, I may give half of my day and the use of my airplane, and I'm paying for the fuel, but what I get is a whole lot more than what I give.
No question.
I'm going to say I do it selfishly. I do it for me, and it's extremely rewarding.
And if you are worried about the money that you would spend to get back into all this, that is a good way to reapply some dollars to something that's important to you, and then hopefully take the tax benefits that come along with that and be able to write some of that stuff off.
And when you're doing one of these things, typically you'll have a custom call sign. ATC recognizes those things. Oftentimes will give you preferred handling, and there are an awful lot of FBOs around the country that will give you a fuel discount if they know that you're coming in under an Angel Flight or Pilots for Patients or one of these other charitable type organizations.
Well, and the thing that, while all those are great, and I look forward to my first Pilots for Patients one day soon, I still just love introducing aviation to people.
Yeah.
I've probably flown the corridor here in town through downtown more than just about anybody else, because I love to take people, show them the buildings, turn around at the monument, come back, introduce a young man or woman to aviation that maybe didn't think it was a possibility to be a pilot, and pass that forward. That's rewarding for me, and the joy, sometimes fingerprints in my yoke because they're squeezing it so hard, but the joy of passing that aviation on is a lot of fun for me, and I think anybody who gets back in the aircraft should make a mission of their own to go share it with people, for sure.
Yeah, we had an event, not this past Saturday, but Saturday before last. We had an event scheduled down at Pearland to fly about 20 or so at-risk kids. It was canceled because of the weather forecast. It actually turned out to be wrong, but we canceled it the day before because you know how it goes. It's rescheduled for June 26th, but I had 12 volunteer pilots, including myself, lined up for this event. Hopefully most of them will be able to, to come and participate again. But there's nothing like seeing the look, particularly in the kids' faces, when we first lift off, if they've never flown before. And then just to be able to look outside and just see all the little ants, the ant-sized cars and things like that. It's an amazing opportunity.
Well, I try to say to all the flight instructors and people around here that fly on a regular basis, we take it a little bit for granted sometimes.
Yeah.
This is something that less than 1% of the population does on a regular basis, and the people that get the chance to do it, normally in those circumstances where it's free and someone's donating their time and their fuel, it's really a joy with no stress to get to do a little lap or two in the patch, for sure.
Years ago, this is a little off topic, but perhaps not. Years and years ago, when I was in a different profession, I had a business meeting up in Dallas, and I had a couple of my work colleagues with me that were going to go, and we decided, I said, let me just fly us because it'll be much easier. They were nervous because it's a little airplane, and neither one had flown with me before. But we took off from an airport here on the west side of town, and we landed at, I don't remember what airport, up in Dallas at any rate, and they brought the car out to us. It was a GA airport. They brought the car out to us, parked it at the wingtip. We got out of the airplane, got into the car, went to our business meeting, and by the time we were done, my colleagues were saying, well, can we do this again sometime? Because it was just so much easier.
Pat's Cirrus becomes the corporate jet in that case, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to fly that. So speaking of jets, one last thing we wanted to make sure we covered before we wrapped this two-part podcast up was really not all rusty pilots haven't flown in a long time, right? We talked about before we started recording, there's a lot of jet pilots out there, United, Delta, American, all these big airlines, that they probably all came up the same way we have, right, through GA and learned how to fly that way, and probably haven't touched a single-engine aircraft, four-cylinder aircraft in a long, long time. Wally, you fly those types of planes. You probably meet some of those pilots. What would you recommend they do to get back into the GA world?
Well, I'll just tell a personal story, but I still am an airline pilot, and enjoying life as an airline pilot 10 years ago, not having any intention of getting in a general aviation airplane, and through circumstances, through my daughter in high school saying, "Dad, can I take flying lessons?" I was shocked. I didn't push her to do it, but she wanted to do it, and lo and behold, next thing we know, she is taking flying lessons, and I'm back in. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to get checked out in an airplane too. I got checked out in an Archer at a local flight school, and then I needed to fly across Houston one day, in this little airplane, and I was petrified. I didn't know how to do it. Well, I shouldn't say I didn't know how to do it, but it was way out of my comfort zone. I'm thinking, I'm going to fly VFR. I got to get clearance into the Bravo airspace. I think, what do I do? Who do I call? What do I say? And
very different than your day job.
Oh yeah, the day job. I mean, you just get in the airplane, and it's you got a dispatcher. Everything's taken care of for you, and you go fly the airplane 4,000 miles, and you go land. Actually, sort of simple. So this was totally different to me, and I do a lot of research. I'm walking around the flight school, the FBO, asking people, what do I do? What do I do? And the CFIs were just giggling at me behind my back. I heard them back there saying, this guy can fly me to Munich in a 767, but he can't fly to over to Ellington and land. And that was the case. So I think AOPA has something on the horizon just for that. Right, Pat?
Yeah, boy, talk about teeing it up. Yeah, we actually have just completed something called Back to Your Roots. And this is a seminar that is aimed just at guys just like you, Wally, who spend most of their time up in the flight levels. It's a VFR flight, but we do touch on IFR things as well. But we talk about getting weather briefings, for example, where it's not just handed to us in the form of some sort of however you get it, and where you actually have to call flight service, or you have to actually look at one of the apps, for example, for flight, and analyze some of the stuff that's happening. We talk about flight following. We talk about how to deal with non-towered airports, because for people that really don't do that on a regular basis, a non-towered airport can be like the wild, wild west. And anything goes. Well, in a sense, that's true. But if you follow the rules, it isn't anything goes. Right. So, and we talk about those kind of things. We talk about, on the IFR side of things, we talk about things like LPV approaches, because I don't think you guys have those things in your airplanes. And so it's that kind of stuff. I mean, it really is going back to the very basics, not in a condescending way whatsoever, because this was actually developed in conjunction with several of my good buddies that are corporate or airline pilots. And my primary concern was I don't want to come across sounding like we're condescending. And to a person, they said, no, man, we love this kind of minutia. You got to get into the weeds on this stuff. So we talk a lot about how to pick up a clearance at a non-towered field, for example. And again, I'm making it sound like it's more IFR than it is. It's really very VFR centric.
Well, they do have to learn how to land again. Let's be clear.
Well, that's true.
I've flown with a few airline pilots.
That is true.
That haven't flown a single engine plane.
That's true. And the webinar really doesn't get into that so much, because that's a mechanical thing. But we talk about airspace. B. I mean, you guys operate in Class Bravo all the time, but C, and to some extent C and D, but they certainly Echo and Golf. Maybe some new concept there. So anyway, back to your roots, and if anybody wants information on that, they can. My email address is pat.brown@aopa.org, and you can email me on that, and I'll give you that information.
Awesome. Well, Pat, thanks for being on here 4 times now, and being a friend and a cohort in the aviation community here in the local Houston market. And as always, Wally, thanks for participating again, and thanks for listening to the show. If you would, let your friends know about the show and pass it along. This hopefully will be a Rusty Pilot podcast that will be heard many times over. As always, thanks for listening, and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.